Life often seems perfect on the outside, but the reality is usually far more complicated. I thought I had an ideal life. My marriage, my family, everything felt like a dream come true. But appearances can be deceiving. My wife had an affair with my cousin. I was 33 years old at the time. My childhood wasn't easy. My relationship with my mother was strained, to say the least. She was harsh and often abusive, yelling at me for no reason. But during those tough times, there was one person I could always rely on: my cousin. He wasn't just family. He was my best friend. We grew up together, went to school together, and spent almost every moment side by side. Even though our mothers were strict and quick to punish us, we had an unspoken understanding. Whatever trouble we got into, it was worth it for the memories we were making. My cousin filled the void my older brother had left behind. He was my partner in everything, from sneaking snacks to enduring family gatherings to exploring the uncharted territories of high school life. In high school, I met a girl who changed everything for me. She wasn't just beautiful, she was magnetic. Everyone, including my cousin, was drawn to her. We both liked her from the start, but we had a silent agreement. Neither of us would make a move unless the other gave their blessing. Eventually, she chose me. We started dating in our senior year and got married in our mid-20s. My cousin was my best man at the wedding. I remember standing there thinking how perfect my life was, my dream girl as my wife, my best friend by my side, and a family bond most people would envy. After the wedding, my wife and I moved into a small house. My cousin visited often. We spent weekends grilling, watching football, and talking for hours. Everything seemed normal, but over time, I started to notice something strange. There was a growing closeness between my wife and my cousin. Their conversations were filled with inside jokes I didn't understand. There was a comfort between them that made me uneasy. Still, I brushed it off, convincing myself I was imagining things. After all, we'd all grown up together. Then, one day, my cousin moved to another city after marrying a beautiful woman named Maria. Life seemed to return to normal, and I thought the strange tension was behind me. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The truth came out eventually, and it shattered my world. My wife and my cousin had been involved in an affair. It was a betrayal so deep that it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I confronted my wife, and the pain of that revelation was almost unbearable. The two people I trusted most had broken me. For a while, I felt completely lost. But life has a way of surprising you. My cousin's marriage didn't last long either. Around the same time, I started talking to his ex-wife, Maria. We shared our pain, our stories, and the betrayal we had both endured. Slowly, we became each other's support. Over time, our bond grew stronger. We realized that amidst all the heartbreak, we had found something new: hope. Today, I'm happier than I ever thought I could be. This story isn't just about betrayal and heartbreak. It's about resilience and new beginnings. Life doesn't stop when things fall apart. Sometimes it's just setting the stage for something better. I've learned that when one chapter ends, another begins. You just have to be willing to embrace it. Life will knock you down, but it also gives you the chance to get back up. It seemed natural for my wife and cousin to share an easy camaraderie. After all, we had all grown up together. But over time, things started to feel different. Their inside jokes, the kind I wasn't a part of, and the sudden silences when I walked into a room started to bother me. Still, I brushed it off, convincing myself that their bond was just as it had always been, strong and familiar. Eventually, it all seemed to settle when my cousin married Maria, a beautiful and successful woman. Maria ran a thriving business, and my cousin's time was now mostly devoted to her and their life together. He wasn't around much anymore, and when he was, Maria was usually with him. Rarely did he visit alone. I had a regular routine on Wednesdays and Saturday evenings. I'd go to a park a few miles away to meet with a group of neighbors. It wasn't anything fancy, just light exercise, casual conversation, and a way to unwind. But one particular Wednesday, the weather took an unexpected turn. Out of nowhere, a heavy rainstorm broke out, scattering everyone in the group. Normally, we'd check the forecast, especially during the rainy season, and reschedule if there was a chance of bad weather. But this time, we were caught off guard. I ended up coming home much earlier than usual. As soon as I stepped into the house, something felt off. There were 2 wine glasses on the coffee table, which struck me as strange since Tina, my wife, and I hadn't shared any drinks together recently. On top of that, there was a faint but distinct scent of perfume in the air. It was familiar, but I couldn't immediately place it. When Tina saw me, she froze. She was wearing clothes she didn't typically wear around the house, and her behavior was unusually nervous. I caught her throwing something into the kitchen trash. I intended to check what it was, but I got distracted, and by the time I thought of it, she had already noticed me. She stood there like a deer caught in headlights. When I asked why she seemed so startled, she laughed nervously, the kind of laugh that's forced and unnatural. I didn't press her right away, but later, while we were in the bathroom together, I brought it up. I mentioned the 2 wine glasses I had seen on the table and asked if someone had stopped by unexpectedly. I also asked why she hadn't messaged or told me about it. Her response was casual. She said my cousin's wife had dropped by to say hello while passing through the area. That explanation didn't sit right with me. My cousin's wife had been overseas for a while, handling some business matters, and everyone in the family knew about it. We were all excited about her new ventures because she was a key figure in her family's success. My cousin even had a significant role in her company, a textbook case of nepotism working out well. My initial reaction was shock. Wait, she was back? While we weren't particularly close, it seemed strange that she wouldn't mention her return, or that my cousin hadn't told me anything about it. At that moment, I let it go. But looking back, I wish I had pressed further. That day marked the beginning of the unraveling of a truth that would change my life forever. I was completely confused, and before I could dig deeper, my wife quickly changed the subject. She mentioned feeling cold and said she needed my warmth. Foolishly, I forced myself to see the entire situation as a misunderstanding, but the thought kept nagging at the back of my mind, like an itch I couldn't scratch. Still, in that moment, I shamelessly let it go because I wanted something else. As time passed, my suspicions only grew stronger. Finally, I got the chance to speak with my cousin alone, without his wife around. I decided to take action. We went to a bar, and I made sure to pay for everything so he could drink as much as he wanted. My plan was to get him tipsy enough to loosen his tongue. Under normal circumstances, if I had confronted him, he would have likely suggested I speak directly with my wife instead of involving him. But I had to know the truth. So I asked him outright when his wife had returned home. He looked shocked, and after hesitating for a moment, admitted while drunk that his wife was still overseas. She wouldn't be back for at least 2 more weeks because her investor had advised her to stay longer to network with other professionals. His answer hit me like a punch in the gut. I tried to keep a neutral face and quickly changed the subject, but alarm bells were ringing in my head. Whoever had visited my wife that day clearly wasn't my cousin's wife. I decided to confront Tina the next morning because, by the time I got home, she was already fast asleep. The next day, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I know you're cheating on me." My voice was cold and firm. To my surprise, she immediately broke down in tears. Between sobs, she said, "I'm not cheating on you. I swear I'm not." She continued, "I have been seeing someone, but not in the way you think. I've been seeing a psychologist." Her response left me even more confused. She explained, "I've been struggling with depression because of how hard it's been for us to conceive. I didn't tell you because you've always said depression isn't real, and I was afraid you'd judge me." This caught me off guard because I'd never said anything like that before. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. Then she added, "If you don't believe me, call your cousin. I've told him everything, and he even suggested I keep this private to avoid unnecessary judgment. Reluctantly, I called my cousin. To my shock, he backed up her story, insisting it was true and urging me to respect her privacy. That day, I chose to accept their version of the story. But deep down, my doubts lingered. The whole incident continued to replay in my mind, refusing to let me rest. She told me not to contact her doctor, saying it could negatively impact her mental health. Her response felt as suspicious as everything else she had claimed. I wanted to question her further, but I feared that pushing her too hard might seem insensitive if what she was saying was actually true. So, I decided to tread carefully for the time being, convincing myself that I might just be overreacting. Still, something didn't feel right. Maybe it was her odd behavior or the impeccable timing of her excuses, but whatever it was, it gave me enough reason to set up hidden cameras in the house. I didn't do it out of malice, but to calm my racing mind. I wanted to see if I could find proof of the truth. She had claimed that she mostly visited her therapist's office but occasionally paid extra for home visits. That struck me as odd since I didn't think therapists typically made house calls. A quick online search revealed that some did in rare cases. After installing the cameras, nothing out of the ordinary happened for a while. I started feeling guilty, thinking that my actions might have caused Tina to stop her sessions altogether, or that she had chosen to continue them elsewhere out of fear of being watched. I even asked her how she was paying for the therapy since I hadn't seen any bills. She claimed she was paying out of her savings to protect her privacy. Months went by, and life seemed to return to normal. Not because I had forgotten, but because I didn't want to act impulsively. Then, one day, I decided to review the footage. It was stored on an SD card. That afternoon, I started skimming through the clips, fast-forwarding through them, looking for anything unusual. Most of it was uneventful until I came across one video that stopped me in my tracks. My cousin had come over unannounced. At first, everything seemed normal. We were in the living room, playing video games and laughing. At one point, he suggested we play an old game we used to master back in college. He insisted that this time he'd beat me. I went to the garage to dig through an old pile of games while leaving him inside the house. What I saw next on the footage completely shattered me. The camera showed him walking into the kitchen where Tina was cooking dinner. They were engaged in a heated argument. The audio wasn't great, since I hadn't prioritized that feature when setting up the cameras. Still, I could clearly hear her asking him, "When are you finally going to divorce your wife?" Hearing this sent shockwaves through me. My initial thought was, why is this her business? After all, we were all supposed to be friends. In my wildest imagination, I never thought anything sinister could be happening. That moment was when it all clicked. I realized I had been made a fool. The betrayal was staring me right in the face, and the pain of witnessing it firsthand was unbearable. When my cousin tried to calm her down by hugging her and started talking about signing some additional papers before divorcing his wife, I was completely stunned. I had never heard her voice sound so desperate before. In the video, I could hear her saying that she had already spoken to me and that I was ready to divorce her. But my cousin wasn't, which is why she hadn't moved forward with it. She claimed that she had done everything he had asked her to do. That moment solidified everything in my mind, erasing any doubts. The scene ended with them sealing their argument with a kiss so passionate it felt like something out of a movie. I felt an unbearable pain in my chest, but for some reason, I couldn't stop watching. I saw them return to the living room, and shortly after, I came back from the garage, smiling like the fool I was, pretending nothing had happened. We laughed and joked as if the person I considered my best friend hadn't just betrayed me in the worst way imaginable. The discovery changed everything. For hours, I sat in silence, my mind racing. My cousin and my wife had betrayed me in the worst possible way. It wasn't just an affair, it was an elaborate web of lies. The manipulation, the deceit, and the audacity of someone I trusted more than anyone else in my family. It cut me to the core. Oddly enough, I felt angrier at my cousin. His betrayal ran deeper than anything I could imagine. Yes, I loved my wife, but he was supposed to be my closest ally, my friend, my brother. No words can truly describe the way I felt in that moment. But instead of acting impulsively, I knew I needed to be strategic if they thought they were smarter than me. The first thing I did was make a copy of the footage and store it on multiple devices. I wasn't about to lose my evidence. Then I reached out to my cousin's wife, Maria. I framed it as a casual meeting, suggesting we catch up. Maria was always up for coffee, and I knew she wouldn't refuse. During our conversation, I gently steered the topic toward her husband. I asked simple questions about how her married life was going, and even commented on how busy he seemed these days. Maria gave a nervous laugh and said everything was fine. She mentioned that her husband being busy was an understatement. Between work and his trips, she barely got to see him. Her words carried a hint of frustration, though she tried to mask it. That conversation gave me the push I needed to delve deeper into the truth. I was wondering about the trips my cousin never mentioned to me. Then it hit me. My wife had also been, traveling around the same time. She claimed it was for work. At least that's what she told me. Deep down, I had my doubts. But at that moment, I didn't bother connecting the dots or looking for more evidence. I decided to tell Maria about the affair because I knew she could handle it far better than I could. After some thought, I showed her the footage. I tried to prepare her gently, giving her a hint of what was coming. I told her she deserved to know the truth. When she saw her husband and my wife kissing in the kitchen, her face turned pale. Her hands trembled, and tears began streaming down her face. We sat there in silence for a few minutes, sipping our drinks, not saying a word. Finally, she asked me, "What are we going to do now?" We discussed it for hours. Maria revealed that her husband had been pressuring her to transfer more shares of her business into his name. He claimed he wanted to take on a bigger role and earn a larger share of the profits in the future. According to her, she had always been cautious, but had recently started to give in to his demands. Maria made it clear she couldn't compromise anymore. She suggested we use her divorce as leverage against them. Meanwhile, I continued to play the role of the clueless husband at home. Tina had no idea that I knew anything, and I made sure to give her no reason to suspect otherwise. Instead of focusing on her, I shifted my attention to securing my finances. I transferred a significant amount of money to my mother and advised her to invest it in Maria's business. This ensured that during our divorce, Tina wouldn't have much to claim. As Maria's divorce progressed, my cousin started to panic. He tried to convince Maria not to cut him out of the business entirely, even offering to part ways amicably. But Maria wasn't having it. Maria's lawyers presented him with a tough deal. They told him he could settle if he agreed not to disclose anything about the affair to Tina before my divorce was finalized. In exchange, he would receive a large settlement. If he refused, Maria threatened to expose all his wrongdoings publicly and ensure he walked away with nothing. He took the deal out of greed. Once Maria's divorce was finalized, I knew it was time to put my plan into action. There was no room to waste any more time. It was inevitable that my cousin would find out at some point, and to be honest, I never fully trusted him to keep his word. So I focused all my energy on my next steps. Within hours, I handed Tina the divorce papers. I kept my tone calm and detached throughout the process. I told her directly that I couldn't do this anymore and wanted a divorce. I was surprised that she didn't put up much of a fight. She simply asked, "Why do you want a divorce?" I told her that I no longer loved her and that her depression story felt like an excuse. I made it sound like it was just my perspective, though I already knew the truth. She tried to feign some concern, but it was clear to me that she was eager to move on, probably thinking that this would give her the freedom to pursue my cousin openly. Before going to court, we negotiated a settlement, which unsurprisingly was in my favor. Most of my assets were tied up in Maria's business, so Tina ended up with only a small fraction of what she had expected. Yet, she seemed satisfied, likely assuming my cousin would take care of her financially. But the real shock came after the divorce. Tina had no idea that my cousin wasn't as financially stable as she had believed. Her plans to secure part of the business fell apart entirely. In the end, they still discussed their future and came to some agreement. However, when news of their secret marriage spread through the family, it was enough to isolate them from everyone. My cousin soon realized he didn't have the resources Tina thought he did. There was no hiding it anymore. But I think he decided that it was better to salvage one thing rather than lose both. He played a few difficult roles, but I believe he only revealed everything to Tina after they got married. He knew that if she had taken me to court, everything would have come out, and I would have used her case to secure a better deal for myself. But she chose the easier path because she wanted to get out quickly. Later, when she learned the full truth, she came to me, begging for forgiveness. But I couldn't care less about her or my cousin anymore. I later found out that she had also tried apologizing to Maria, but I had blocked my ex-wife on every platform possible. She had left a marriage with someone who could have given her everything for someone who could give her nothing. In the end, perhaps all they had left was each other's love. I'll never know when she started cheating on me, whether it was before or after our marriage, how many times it happened, or with how many people. All I know is that I had far better prospects than my cousin, and she only chose him because his wife's business gave him opportunities that made him seem more appealing. When women cheat on you, the truth is, even when they give you answers, you're often left without the clarity you seek. No one will openly admit how many times they've betrayed you in the past. It hurts, but it's not the end of the world. I'll get through this. During this time, Maria and I have grown very close, and honestly, that's my favorite part of this whole ordeal. However, we're keeping things simple for now. We've agreed to take things slow, and for the moment there's no talk of marriage, especially after everything we've been through. What's happening between us feels natural and honest. For the first time in a long while, I feel genuinely happy. And no, it's nothing like what my cousin did. If boundaries were ever in place, we've always respected them. Still, we're moving forward together. Our focus is on rebuilding our lives and making sure we never experience this kind of hurt again. Maybe, in the end, something good has come out of a bad situation for both of us. It's no surprise that things sometimes take unexpected turns. Accepting and understanding it takes time. Honestly, there's no point dwelling on why they did what they did when it's clear they made those choices behind your back. It's devastating to find that something as meaningful as the music you shared during your marriage became part of their secret relationship. But now, the focus has to be on yourself, on what makes you happy and helps you heal. This chapter won't define your life anymore. Their choices were a reflection of their flaws, not yours. Have you ever noticed a partner or a friend who seemed closer to someone else than they should have been? Share your story with us in the comments below. Thank you for sharing this journey with us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next story. See you soon.